Hi, this is Shannon, and I will be reading you selections from the Sandwich Enterprise, dated January 24th, 2025. Our first headline is Planning Board Discusses Proposed Zoning Amendments by Taylor Fazzetti. Sandwich Director of Community Development, Leanne Drake, discussed drafted zoning amendments in light of the state adopting the Affordable Homes Act during the Sandwich Planning Board meeting on Tuesday. The Affordable Homes Act was signed by Governor Maura T. Healey on August 6. The legislation allows $5.16 billion in spending over a 5-year period and includes approximately 50 policy initiatives in an effort to counter rising housing costs. Sandwich's zoning regarding accessory dwelling units and non-conforming lots will be affected. Accessory dwelling units. Ms. Drake said that on February 2nd, accessory dwelling units will be made a protected class, meaning that current zoning regulations will be considered as out of compliance with state regulations. She added that not being in compliance with state bylaws can affect the town's ability to secure grants and also opens up the possibility for the state to sue the town. Something like that doesn't typically happen on the offset of new regulations, she said, adding that if years go by without adopting the new regulations, the town could face a lawsuit. Under the new regulations, the planning board can no longer regulate the lot size for accessory dwelling units. Every lot in a residential district is now eligible for an accessory dwelling unit, she said. The dimensional components of that district would limit whether it would be detached, attached, or interior. Additionally, because one accessory dwelling unit per site is allowed by right, a special permit for the first accessory dwelling unit on a property is no longer required. The new regulations will also no longer allow enforcement regarding ownership, meaning that the primary owner does not have to stay on the property. So essentially, both the main dwelling and the accessory dwelling unit could both be rented, she said. The bylaw states that the accessory dwelling cannot be used for boarding and lodging and commercial uses including short-term and seasonal rentals. Planning Board member Jeffrey R. Picard asked if they could specifically outline that seasonal use is not permitted. Multiple Planning Board members asked how that would differ from seasonal rentals. A seasonal use is not a rental, it's a use, he said. I am not talking about rentals, I am talking about the owner only uses it seasonally. So, you build an accessory dwelling unit and you let your family use it seasonally. We really aren't getting what we wanted for an accessory dwelling unit. It's really just creating an opportunity for a vacation home. Multiple planning members said that they did not agree. I think people should be able to use their property as they see fit within the law, said Planning Board member Eileen M. Stars. Mr. Picard reiterated that seasonal use would not align with the intent of the new regulations set in an effort to create affordable year-round housing. Chairwoman Jennifer Rossig suggested that Mr. Picard present his opinion during the public hearing on a matter planned for February 18th. Ms. Drake explained that there is also an option to allow a second accessory dwelling unit on a property by special permit. The board is looking for feedback on the option during the public hearing. Additionally, Ms. Drake will hold a program at the Center for Active Living on Wednesday, February 12th at 11 a.m. to discuss opportunities and considerations regarding accessory dwelling units. Those interested should call the Center of Active Living at 508-888-4737 to register. Non-conforming lots. Ms. Drake also shared bylaw changes following state requirements regarding non-conforming lots. The changes will allow for adjacent lots under the same ownership to no longer be treated as a single lot to allow for more single-family homes to be built. The lots must conform to existing requirements of area, frontage, width, yard, or depth, where each such lot has not less than 10,000 square feet of area and 75 feet of frontage. Additionally, the lots must be in a zoning district that allows for single-family residential use. Any single-family residence constructed on said lot cannot exceed 1,850 square feet of heated living area, cannot have less than 3 bedrooms, and cannot be used as a short-term rental or seasonal home. This would make quite a few unbuildable lots buildable, Ms. Drake said. The purpose of this was to create more affordable housing by restricting the size of the dwelling and the bedrooms. Our next headline is Town Hall Annex Request for Proposal Process Proceeds by Taylor Frizzetti. The Sandwich Select Board approved of the town moving forward with the disposition of the Town Hall Annex through a request for proposal process after reviewing the final draft during the board's meeting on January 16th. The Town Hall Annex is in rough shape, with repairs estimated to cost upward of $3 million. Assistant Town Manager Heather B. Harper explained during a September 12th Select Board meeting that the request for proposal process gives the town a bit more control over how the property is utilized. The board will be able to include conditions on the sale through a request for proposal. The draft includes a few restrictions for future uses, including having the proposed building be consistent with existing zoning, getting reviewed by the Old Kings Highway Historic District for any changes to the exterior of the building, and such other terms and conditions deemed to be in the best interest of the town of Sandwich as deemed by the Select Board. The draft outlines that a highly advantageous rating will be granted to proposals that emphasize the creation of commercial space or multi-family housing that will add up to and improve the vibrancy of historic Main Street and the Village District. When it comes to public parking, proposals that demonstrate a significant commitment to permanent parking with a one-way egress to River Street will be given the highest ranking. Proposals that allow the public to use the parking during special events, such as the 4th of July, Sandwich Fest, and others, and might include the one-way egress, will be ranked as the second highest. Proposals that do not demonstrate a commitment to public parking will be ranked the lowest. Regarding the one-way egress to River Street, Ms. Harper said that if there is a proposal that is so advantageous to the town that the one-way egress is a necessity of that use, that the board may consider offering that. It isn't something that we are saying, we want you to provide this. It really is related to an advantageous use. Now that the Select Board voted for the town to move forward with the process, the final draft will need to be reviewed by Town Council. Once advertising is confirmed, Ms. Harper said that a date to receive the proposals will be established. Then a review committee will be appointed by the town manager to evaluate and rate proposals according to the minima criteria and comparative criteria. The review committee may interview the proposers before making a recommendation to the Select Board, which can approve or deny the proposal. Our next headline is Library Looks to the Future with Strategic Plan by Amy Rothman. As libraries adjust to a technology-driven society, Sandwich Public Library Director Diane Castigliola is working to set the framework and goals of the library for the next 3 years, keeping the community's current and future needs in mind. To do this, Ms. Castigliola has been working behind the scenes, flipping through endless articles, gathering research, and speaking with community members to build a sense of the needs, wants, and priorities of the library for the future. That information will then be condensed into a strategic plan, which will require approval from the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners. The plan will outline the library's main priorities for the next 3 years. Also, the plan will open up funding opportunities from both the federal government and the state. With an approved strategic plan, the Sandwich Public Library will be able to apply for Library Services and Technology Act funds, the only federal grant exclusive to libraries, and the Massachusetts Library Construction Loan Program, which helps fund capital improvements for libraries in the state. The Massachusetts Library System's website states that libraries that have done planning have repeatedly confirmed how important the process has been in their local efforts to gain recognition, funding, and staffing for accomplishing the goals and objectives set out in their plans. Preparing the strategic plan. At the Sandwich Public Library Board of Trustees meeting on January 14th, Ms. Castigliola provided an update with the current status of the strategic plan. At previous meetings, she told the board that she plans to have a draft version of the strategic plan prepared by August of this year. The board would then vote whether to approve or deny the plan, and will then need to submit the plan to the Massachusetts MBLC for approval by October 1st. The library said that the Board of Trustees will also need to submit an action plan to the MBLC by December 1st to outline the specific methods and steps the library will take to bring the strategic plan to fruition. MBLC stands for Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners. To gain a sense of community input, Ms. Castigliola has developed a community survey for community members and library users. "I've done a lot of work on this," she said. "I'm trying to capture people's attitudes for the library." The survey will consist of mostly multiple choice questions because I don't want it to be exhausting, she explained. Ms. Castigliola said that the survey will also include a few open-ended questions, as well as questions regarding demographics like age and location. In addition to the community survey, Ms. Castigliola is working to create multiple focus groups to brainstorm new ideas and gain feedback on the plan. "I'm hoping to have at least 3 public listening sessions where people could come in and talk to me," she said. Her goal for the focus groups is to create a free-flowing conversation about people's preferences for the library and the town. Ideally, she said, she would have at least 3 focus groups, one for the library staff, one for the Friends of the Library, and one for the Board of Trustees. She emphasized that the focus groups would stray away from typical business techniques such as a SWOT analysis, a business tool that outlines strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. "I don't think much comes from a SWOT or SOAR analysis," she said. "I'd like to have more opportunity to hear what people think, and then I can go dig through that data in my office." Ms. Castigliola then suggested that the committee would be open to blocking off a piece of time during an upcoming board meeting for the board to hold its focus group. "I would love to have a focus group with all of you. If you would be open to dedicating either the February or March regularly scheduled trustees meeting to discussing the strategic plan," she said. Chairwoman Jane Burke noted that the Board of Trustees meeting scheduled in March might work best, so that the board has some time to prepare for the focus group. But we already have the time slot on our calendar, so we could devote a good part of an upcoming meeting to it, Ms. Burke added. Ms. Castigliola will lead the trustees in a focus group regarding the strategic plan for the library on Tuesday, March 11th at 7 p.m. in the McKnight Room at the Sandwich Public Library. Our next headline is Local Organizations Recognize Human Trafficking Prevention Month by Jamie Perkins. This January, the Human Trafficking Unit of the Cape and Islands District Attorney's Office and the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office partnered with several community organizations to host an art exhibition in recognition of National Human Trafficking Prevention Month. Held in the Geyer Art Barn in Hyannis, the exhibition aims to raise awareness of the fact that human trafficking happens even right here, in the Cape's own backyard. Through poetry, pottery, drawings, and other mediums, the artwork depicts the devastating impact human trafficking has on every life it touches. Art will be on display through February 8th. Exhibition launch. It does take a community to get the word out that human trafficking does occur on the Cape and Islands, District Attorney Robert J. Galibois said at the exhibition's kickoff event. Galibois said at the exhibition's kickoff event last Thursday. We're no different than anywhere else, and our number one goal is and always will be to try to reach survivors and help survivors, and of course prosecute the offenders and persecutors when we have that chance. The event was both educational and somber. Attendees learned about the signs, risk factors, and vulnerabilities associated with human trafficking. They heard the powerful story of Jessica, a survivor whose body was sold by a family member at just 3 years old, leaving her to endure the resulting trauma throughout her life. Jessica asked to be identified by her first name only. Jessica's exploitation did not end when she was no longer under a family member's care. She survived years of rape and abuse from several men, including men in positions of power. My life has been me being exploited from time after another, in some form or another. It seems like I always have to give more than I have to give of myself to get a tiny bit, Jessica said. If only you knew what a little ounce of love would do for someone like me, it would go a long way. In an effort to raise awareness for people like herself, Jessica shares her story in public, choosing to be vulnerable with complete strangers. She reveals that she is homeless and lives on $400 a month, yet she does not earn a dime for speaking at these events. This is Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and the biggest question I always get is, what can we do for survivors? What can we do to help? The community wants to step in, Jessica said. I'm a little unhappy with the outcomes of these events, and I have to be completely transparent. This is probably the 4th or 5th event that I've spoken at. I've stood before people naked, not benefiting anything, not even asking anything, but not being offered anything. This too is exploitation, Jessica said. I need to be honest and tell you how I'm feeling. I've been reached out to a lot. I love doing what I do because it's not for you guys. This is for survivors like me. This is for the one woman. I don't care if it's somebody in this room or somebody you make a phone call to or see it in social media. This is for them. This is for the girl who still hasn't found her voice. It was clear that Jessica's grievance was not meant to shame the event organizer, but rather to plead for more direct support for survivors and victims of human trafficking. Upon hearing her speech, Mr. Galiboy announced that his office had received grant money and would be hosting a statewide conference on human trafficking on April 10th and 11th. He offered Jessica a compensated feature speaker position on the spot. What is human trafficking? The U.S. Department of Justice describes human trafficking as a crime that involves compelling or coercing a person to provide labor or services or to engage in commercial sex acts. The coercion cannot be subtle or overt, physical or psychological. It can be subtle or overt, physical or psychological. Nationally, the exploitation of a minor for commercial sex is human trafficking, regardless of whether any form of force, fraud, or coercion is involved. In Massachusetts, commercial sex trafficking does not require evidence of force, fraud, or coercion, regardless of the age of the victim. However, labor trafficking does require proof of force. Children's Cove, the Cape and Islands Child Advocacy Center, specifies forms of human trafficking that affect children. Commercial sexual exploitation of children occurs when a person under the age of 18 is offered or given something of value to them in exchange for some type of sexual act. It doesn't have to be in person, and it doesn't need to be money for it to be commercial sexual exploitation. The center's website reads, value could be anything to a child. This includes food, clothing, a warm place to sleep, better grades, vapes, alcohol, or other substances, a trip to a salon, or even a ride somewhere. Another form of sexual exploitation is child abuse, sexual abuse material, formerly referred to as child pornography. Child sexual abuse material is much more than photos and videos. It is a form of exploitation and abuse documented and shared across the internet in perpetuity, the website reads. Every time an image is viewed, shared, paid for, or downloaded, the child is being re-victimized, and a crime takes place. This is one of the largest issues in our region. Indicators of human trafficking. The District Attorney's Office has compiled a list of human trafficking warning signs. They include appearing malnourished, overly fearful, nervous or submissive, avoiding eye contact or casual conversation, unusually fearful or anxious behavior if law enforcement is seen or mentioned, deferring to another person before giving information, injuries such as bruises, cigarette burns, broken or missing teeth, or branding-style tattoos marking them as property, clothing that is inappropriately sexual, especially if a young person is in the company of an older person, or inappropriate for the weather, a minor that is unaccompanied at night or has difficulty explaining who they are with and what they are doing, not knowing where they are or what town they are in, visiting Cape Cod but unsure where they are staying, no money for transportation or food. Trafficking on Cape Cod. According to the 2023 Regional Report on the Sexual Exploitation of Children, there has been a steady increase in CSEC in southeastern Massachusetts since 2016. In 2023, the 4 children's advocacy centers across southeastern Massachusetts collectively served 364 children who were identified as alleged victims of sexual exploitation in the region. The 364 referrals included 289 female-identified children, 61 male-identified children, and 15 transgender non-binary individuals. Approximately 85.4% of these cases involved children between 13 and 17 years old, and 14.6% involved children 12 years old and younger. Data from 2024 have not yet been released. We experience a lot of online exploitation on Cape Cod. A lot of people don't know that online exploitation and the exploitation of children fall under human trafficking statutes, said Anna Colby, Child Exploitation Program Coordinator at Children's Cove. It's very easy for children to be trapped in these cycles where they're being lied to and tricked, and that can turn into very dangerous situations, which unfortunately can lead to people losing their lives. Resources available. Several organizations on Cape Cod partnered for the art exhibition and worked to combat human trafficking. Cape Cod PATH, People Against Trafficking Humans, is a grassroots task force formed by a group of concerned citizen volunteers after watching the film Hidden in Plain Sight in January 2014. Its mission is to eliminate human trafficking on Cape Cod by raising awareness through education, outreach, and collaboration. Cape Cod PATH has a strong working relationship with a victim assistance specialist in the Department of Homeland Security Investigations. Since its inception, Cape Cod PATH has offered presentations at local libraries, religious organizations, and schools. We have hosted events such as movie, discussion panels, and outdoor vigils, its website reads. We have set up information tables at conferences and gift fairs. We have visited Cape hotels and motels, distributed flyers, and offered staff training. We have assembled and delivered hundreds of resource bags to assist survivors. Children's Cove coordinates the multidisciplinary response to cases of child sexual abuse, physical abuse, witness to domestic violence, sexual exploitation, and trafficking, according to its website. It receives referrals from investigative agencies and provides assessment services, forensic interviews, mental health treatment referrals, family advocacy, medical treatment, and a multidisciplinary approach to CSEC. These services occur in a child-friendly, culturally sensitive environment so as not to re-traumatize the child. Independence House is the only comprehensive community-based organization on Cape Cod providing free and confidential specialized services and widespread programs for children, ages 5+, teenagers, adults, and the later in life community who are survivors of or impacted by domestic or sexual violence, its website says. It provides emergency housing, individual and group counseling, medical accompaniment, court advocacy, housing stabilization services, child care, legal advocacy, and a 24-hour hotline. Health Imperative's website states that the organization improves the health, safety, and economic security of low-income and vulnerable individuals and families in communities throughout southeastern Massachusetts and has a center in Hyannis. Health Imperatives provides several forms of assistance, including services for human trafficking survivors. Those services include individual and group counseling, support groups, medical and police advocacy, and community resources, such as applying for victim compensation, connecting survivors to a court advocacy program or domestic violence shelter, and addressing housing, food insecurity, and employment needs. It also provides human trafficking training to community organizations, educators, first responders, medical providers, social workers, and law enforcement. Treasured Life Initiative provides community education and training and assists survivors with strategic exit strategies, appropriate safe shelter options, and knowledgeable service providers, its website states. It provides emergency, short-term, and long-term housing opportunities. To report information regarding suspicions of commercial sex or labor trafficking, call or text the District Attorney's Office Human Trafficking Hotline at 774-882-0632 or submit a report on its online tip page. To get help, call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 888-373-7888 or text HELP to 233733. For local support, call the 24-hour hotline at 800-439-6507. Our next article is Bill to Grant Additional Liquor Licenses Signed by Taylor Frizzetti. No official communication has been received, but the bill authorizing the town of Sandwich to grant additional alcohol licenses was signed by Governor Maura T. Healey on January 3rd. The legislation process kicked off after the May 2023 town meeting approved of the Select Board granting the additional licenses. The additional licenses were requested due to a number of businesses in town that were looking to expand their offerings but were unable to do so because there were no other liquor licenses available. The bill reads that the following locations may receive an all-alcohol license. Ice Cream Sandwich at 66 Route 6A. Heritage Theaters at 280 Route 130. The former Town Hall Annex at 145 Main Street. And the Dunbar Restaurant and Tea Room at 1 Water Street. Additionally, the Select Board may grant one additional wine and malt license to 66 Route 6A. Town meeting voted that if a license is not used, the town may then grant the license to a new applicant and shall not be limited by location. However, the bill the state approved reads, the licensing authority shall not approve the transfer of any license issued under this 21 section to any other location, but it may grant the license to a new applicant at the same location. For example, if an entity purchasing the Town Hall Annex decides to not utilize the liquor license, then it is unable to transfer the license to another location because the licenses are site-specific. Assistant Town Manager Heather B. Harper said the Select Board requested a liquor license for the Town Hall Annex in an effort to increase the potential market value of the location. Ms. Harper said that there were 2 occasions when the House and Senate Council had asked the town to revise the special legislation regarding the need for licenses to be tied to a location. When Town Council drafted the legislation, it was noted that the special legislation was unlikely to survive at the state level. But the town still tried to get the special legislation approved, Ms. Harper said. She explained that there is no guarantee that will be included in the final legislation and that the town will follow state requirements. Ms. Harper said that the town will not take any action until it receives official notice from the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission that the licenses are eligible to exercise. The enactment of Chapter 327 is the positive result of our staff and the Select Board listening to the community and working with our representative and leadership at the state level to address small business needs in Sandwich, Ms. Harper said. We are very appreciative of the support we received from Senator Susan Moran, Representatives Stephen Zarhos, and the Governor Healy to bring this initiative for additional liquor licenses to Sandwich a reality. The next article is Harbor Master Resigns by Taylor Frizzetti. Harbor Master Michael S. McDunning voluntarily resigned from his position on January 10th. Mr. Dunning was hired for the job in summer 2018. Prior to taking on the harbor master role, Mr. Dunning worked as the deputy harbor master. Before coming to Sandwich in January 2015, Mr. Dunning spent 2 years as vessel superintendent and equipment manager at Cashman Dredging and Marine Contracting in Quincy, according to his resume. He managed vessel and heavy equipment operations and repairs, set budgets, hired and scheduled crews, and negotiated pricing, among other duties. Prior to working for Cashman, Mr. Dunning traveled around the world as third mate on an unlimited tonnage cargo ship for vessel management services in New Orleans. He holds a bachelor's degree in marine transportation from Massachusetts Maritime Academy. Mr. Dunning helped oversee the construction of the new harbor master's office and garage and several dock replacements. He helped with numerous beautification efforts at the marina and helped expand parking areas. Mr. Dunning also worked to improve traffic patterns to be better accommodate marina area patrons. Jeff Spillane of Pierce Coat, the town's public relations group, said Assistant Harbor Master Nick Giordano is filling the role for the time being. Mr. Spillane said that the town plans to begin the hiring process for the vacant harbor master position in the near future. Our next article is Weston and Sampson named contractor for middle high school wastewater treatment project by Taylor Frizzetti. Weston and Sampson have been chosen to pursue construction for the wastewater treatment upgrades for Sandwich Middle High School. The Select Board voted on the decision during its meeting last Thursday. Wright Pierce, the engineer for the project, received 3 bids for the work, with Weston and Sampson's bid being the lowest at $1,827,947. Robert B. Our Company submitted the bid totaling of $2,156,972, and BizCo Building Systems, Inc. submitted the third bid totaling at $2,433,372. Town manager George H. Bud Dunham said that the work needed at the high school is very extensive, with internal mechanisms needed to be replaced. I think we all recognize, as fast as we all want to move on this stuff, it's not going to happen as quickly as we would like, Mr. Dunham said, noting that the entirety of Cape Cod is dealing with wastewater treatment. I am pleased to say that the schools are somewhere where we can take virtually immediate action, so that it is a big plus. Mr. Dunham said town meeting's approval of appropriating $1.88 million from the Wastewater Investment Fund for the purpose of implementing the town's comprehensive water resources management plan was critical to fund a portion of the project. Additionally, Mr. Dunham said that approximately $850,000 in American Rescue Plan Act funds will be used for the project. The project is planned to be finished in about a year, he said, with the majority of the work being done in the summer and the possibility to tie up any loose ends during winter break. Select Board member R. Patrick Ellis asked how the plant will be operated after construction is complete. Mr. Dunham said that the current long-term plan is to go out to bid to have a third party oversee the plant. With all the wastewater work going on the Cape, we should get some really good bids, he said. The next article is Planning Board Reviews Proposed Bylaw for Short-Term Rentals by Taylor Frizzetti. Director of Community Development Leanne Drake presented a proposed general bylaw for short-term rentals to the Sandwich Planning Board during the meeting on Tuesday. Ms. Drake said that the Select Board is undertaking short-term rental regulations and asked the Planning Board to review them. The reason for this came about in the 10th edition of the Building Code was published in October, and the Building Code is now regulating short-term rentals for safety, compliance, and inspections, she said. She added that the town will implement a registration program, meaning all short-term rentals must register with the town of Sandwich, and short-term rental owners must sign up for annual inspections. Special town meeting recently approved of establishing a revolving fund in an effort to support the new regulations regarding annual inspection of short-term rentals. A part-time position for the building department will be created utilizing funds from the revolving fund to conduct the inspections. Ms. Drake said that the regulation is being proposed as a general bylaw because general bylaws take effect and you don't have vested rights. If we propose it as a zoning bylaw, we would have grandfathering of existing short-term rentals. It would be very difficult to regulate. She said that when it is introduced as a general bylaw under the Select Board, it is easier to regulate. The state's definition, as well as the bylaw's definition of a short-term rental, is a rental that is rented to an occupant for 1 to 30 consecutive days at a time. Ms. Drake said that something is considered a short-term rental if it's rented for under 30 days for at least 14 days out of the year. Ms. Drake said that there are about 700 registered short-term rentals. However, it is likely that there are about 1,000 short-term rentals in town. The bylaw outlines that rental certifications should be displayed on the property in a prominent area and include a 24-hour local contact information. Ms. Drake explained that providing contact information for the entity that owns the property gives those who have concerns a person to talk to as well as a point person for police to contact if they receive any calls regarding complaints. It just adds a level of accountability that we don't currently have, she said. We haven't had a huge call for restrictive regulations on short-term rentals, Ms. Drake said. We get a handful of complaints a year, particularly related to noise nuisance, parking, trash pickup, those type of items that usually rectify itself by the time someone else comes in. Ms. Drake said that in the future the town may consider contracting with the company to obtain information of short-term rentals that are not registered. What they do is they basically troll all of the different sites, and they do cross-reference between these postings and who is listed on the Department of Revenue's record, she said. The bylaw will be enforced by the building commissioner. Those that violate the bylaw may be subject to a number of penalties, including non-criminal disposition, suspension of certificate of registration, and civil penalty. The draft will go before the Select Board towards the end of February. A public hearing on the proposed bylaw will be held before it is brought to town meeting. Our next article is Sandwich Conservation Commission Denies Whitecapped Path Project by Taylor Frizzetti. The Conservation Commission denied a proposed raise and rebuild project for 2 Whitecap Path on Wednesday. The project proposed rebuilding a home in the same footprint of a home on a dune that was irrevocably damaged by storms, resulting in it being demolished in 2021. The proposed plan also included the installation of an elevated septic tight tank and the construction of an external elevated stairway. The project, which has been discussed and reviewed since October, raised a number of concerns for the Commission. Most recently, commissioners questioned whether the project could be considered a raise and rebuild since nothing has stood on the site for a number of years. I would reiterate our client's position that the amount of time that has passed between when the demolition occurred and now does not change the status of the land as to whether it is considered buildable, and its applicant's position that the land is buildable, said David Hennig of Galvin & Galvin, the applicant's lawyer. Assistant Director of Natural Resources Jenna L. Silva said that she consulted with Natural Resources Director Dave DeCanto regarding the issue. There really isn't anything in the bylaw or state law that says that does not change the status of the land that it was constructed on. It's still considered a rebuild, not just a build, she said. Gabrielle Hunter Enser of Marcus, Errico, Emmer and Brooks, PC, an attorney representing the Sandwich Shores Condominium Association, reiterated her client's concerns, specifically regarding the elevated tight tank. On this particular dune, there is a lot of erosion. The tight tank is going to essentially cause environmental issues. It is located in the common area of the condominium, and they do not have permission to build that tight tank. Additionally, there are some issues with encroachment on other people's properties as well, she said. Gary Delaney of Freeman Avenue, whose property sits behind the proposed project, reiterated the concerns he shared during the December meeting, including issues that installing the proposed dry well may impose. There is sand there. There is no house there. So we have established that the lot can be built on. What we need to establish now is that this lot any better shape with this development on it than it is now. How is the site better? Commissioner Bernice M. Weiler asked. She said that as it stands, she did not believe that the proposed project made any improvements to the environment. Commissioner Jeremy M. Shea agreed, adding that it is likely the house would not last long in the chosen area. Karen Healy of BSC Group noted how beach grass was planned to be planted as a way to mitigate further erosion. We would be glad to enhance the bank in any way to make it more stable, he said. However, the commissioners decided that the project would cause more harm to the fragile area, particularly when it came to the elevated tight tank, causing them to deny the project. And here comes an event. Boat Builders Show returns on January 31st. The Boat Builders Show on Cape Cod returns January 31st through February 2nd at the Highport Conference Center, 35 Scudder Avenue in Hyannis. Hours are Friday from 2 to 7 p.m., Saturday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. The show, created 19 years ago, raises the boating public's awareness of the many talented, smaller, independent boat builders located on Cape Cod, the South Coast, and the South Shore. Show visitors get the chance to talk to each builder, the people who create and construct the many boats that will be on display. The combined experience of the exhibitors covers all types of boat construction, from plank-on frame to molded fiberglass to cold mold composite construction. This assembly of builders have worked in all boat building processes. The knowledge amassed at this one show under one roof is tremendous. They've done it all, explained show organizer Scott Dayton. On Saturday, Adam Cove will share his adventures in the race to Alaska aboard his Marshall Sanderling. On Sunday, Nat Benjamin will speak on traditional plank-on frame construction. View demonstrations of building a Plymouth Rocks rocking boat and a Cape Cod Frosty sailboat. Additional exhibitors include marine-related businesses from sailmakers to those in engine repair and repowering, nautical books, coatings, marine technology, pennants and flags, marine canvases, and more. For the list of exhibitors, updates on seminars, guest speakers, more information and directions, visit www.boatbuildershowcc.com. Show admission is $10 and children under 12 are free. A ticket to the show includes admission to the Cape Cod Maritime Museum, 135 South Street, Hyannis. And the next article is Pick Your Poison. Author talks Poisoner's Trilogy at Falmouth Forum by Kaylee Remillard. What do you know about female killers? Specifically, poisoners. Most likely not much. But not to worry, because that's where Deborah Bloom, longtime author and science journalist, comes in. Poison is Miss Bloom's Metaphorical Bread and Butter. She is in the process of writing the third book in her trilogy about the whats, hows, and whys of poison in our world, and has spent years researching, learning, and writing about the topic. The auditorium at MBL's Little Laboratory was nearly full on January 10th, with community members waiting to hear Ms. Bloom give a talk on her book series at the MBL's Falmouth Forum, where she shared what she has dredged up from the depths of history in her journey to unearth some of the world's most prolific female poisoners. I think part of it was, I'm really interested in how you get away with murder, and no one gets away with murder better than female poisoners, Miss Bloom said in an interview with the Enterprise prior to her talk. One example she gave was Jane Toppan, also known as Jolly Jane, for her delightful demeanor. Jane might have been jolly, but the horror she quietly left in her wake is staggering. The private nurse is believed to have killed somewhere between 30 and 100 people at the end of the 1800s, Miss Bloom said. Even worse, she is said to have often laid down with her victims as they died, so she would feel their breath leave their body because it gave her such a thrill, Miss Bloom said. There is almost no other female serial killer on record who does that, and so when you go and look at research into psychopathy, it all says women aren't really psychopaths, or they don't measure up to male psychopaths, which is not entirely true, Ms. Bloom said during her Falmouth Forum talk. I was trying to explore some of that issue. Why don't we see this? What does it tell us about sanity and poison? Jolly Jane's run as a serial killer came to an end due to her apparent failure to pay rent at a cottage inn, of all places, Katamet. She was renting from the family of Alden P. Davis, and according to the New England Historical Society, when Miss Davis turned up in Cambridge to collect the rent from her tenant, Jolly Jane killed her with a cocktail of morphine and atropine. She was not done yet, though. She went back to Katamet to spend time with the rest of the Davis family. That time ended upon the untimely deaths of everyone in Jane's company within weeks of her arrival. A police inquiry was undertaken after Captain Irving Foster Gibbs, who was at sea when his wife Mary Davis Gibbs was murdered, questioned the death of his family. Jane Toppan was arrested later that same year. Miss Bloom's upcoming book, as she describes it, is an exploration of what we know and don't know, why we don't see these women, and what they can tell us about ourselves. We know the John Wayne Gacy's and the Jeffrey Dahmers and the Ted Bundys, who are just like amateurs compared to these women. They've never killed nearly as many, she said. Why aren't these women household names? Those are the questions that started Miss Bloom on her journey to unearth the female serial killers of old who had been lost to time. The book, which is currently on the revision stage, would be a true crime-focused follow to her previous two books, The Poisoner's Handbook, which is about the introduction of forensics and toxicology into 1920 police work in New York City, and The Poison Squad, which takes a more chemical and health-focused look at how we got to the age of food safety as we presently know it. What got Ms. Bloom started on her upcoming book, she said, was that she wanted to write a female empowerment book about female poisoners. Once she got into it, though, she realized it was much more complicated than that. Some of these are really terrible people who do terrible things, so it's like, I don't feel entirely empowered by you. But what I did realize is that when we look at these female poisoners, each of them has a story that actually tells us something about society or ourselves. Women dealing with the lack of power in the 19th century. A self-proclaimed failed chemistry major, Miss Bloom has dedicated most of her career to putting the journalist's spin on science, and specifically chemistry. She wants to learn about how things work, she said, and chemistry essentially provides those building blocks right down to the molecule. Her book trilogy takes a historic look at how humans have historically used and interacted with poisons in our homes, in our food and bodies, in our products, and for some, like the women in her upcoming book, in moments of desperation. The 19th century is known as the arsenic century, Ms. Bloom told the crowd at the Falmouth Forum. But I also use this to look at the states of women mostly in Britain, Women had no power in 19th century Britain, and once you were married, you could not make a will, you could not own property, you could not get divorced, you could not go to a university. Looking at the literature from the time, Ms. Bloom said, she realized that when it comes to women and poison, meaning over-the-counter and household products containing things like arsenic, strychnine, and antimony, it is really all they had. The women had poison, Ms. Bloom said. They had no other choice. In one case, Ms. Bloom talked about a group of women married to factory workers who used antimony on their husbands. The men were drunk. They were abusive. They'd come home and beat them up, and so this group of women got together, and they would put antimony, which is quite like arsenic, in their tea, she said. They got caught, she continued, when one of the ladies put a little too much antimony in, and her husband died. But what was really interesting to Ms. Bloom, she said, was how they described the situation after they got caught. They called the antimony the quiet. They were trying to protect themselves from their abusive husbands. Ms. Bloom's research for her trilogy has taken her around the globe, into the depths of the historical archives and down a winding path of tracking poisons, their uses, their users, and the effects on society. At the heart of her first book in the trilogy, she said, was the message that chemistry is cool, that ethos that still holds true years later, as final book in the trilogy prepares to head to print. One of the things that's important to me, and this probably illuminates all three of these books in some way, we live in this chemical world, Ms. Bloom told the Enterprise. It influences and changes our lives and affects us every day. We actually have to understand that. We have to be able to apply some common sense to what's dangerous and what's not. We need tools for navigation. Ms. Bloom's third book is tentatively titled The Weapon, Women and Poison in Our Murderous World. A release date has not yet been announced. Obituaries. Lucille G. Murphy. Lucille Guinevere Murphy of Sandwich died on January 16. She was 86. Born to Adrian Goebel and Rosaire Ares, she grew up in Stoughton and Sharon and graduated from Archbishop Williams High School in 1957. 2 years later, she graduated from Catherine Labourière School of Nursing, now Labourière College of Healthcare, and embarked on a career in nursing. While working at the Veterans Affairs Hospital in Brockton, she met Thomas William Murphy. They married in 1960 and raised their 4 daughters in Brockton. The couple later moved to Cape Cod, where they lived for 30 years, first in South Yarmouth and then in Sandwich. She worked at the V&A of Cape Cod. She enjoyed painting the serene landscapes of the Cape and volunteering with the Sandwich Arts Council and the Sandwich Council on Aging. She was a communicant of Corpus Christi Parish in East Sandwich. She leaves her daughters, Jackie Kirchhoff and her husband Paul of Virginia Beach, Virginia, Kathy Pipkin and her husband Alan of South Portland, Maine, Maureen Murphy and her husband Don Ross of Richmond, California, and Sheila Murphy and her husband John Sevison of Northampton. She also leaves 8 grandchildren, many nieces and nephews, and a brother, Paul Ares. She was predeceased by her husband in 2023, siblings John and Roland Ares, and Bernadette Hickson, and an infant son, Thomas Murphy. Visiting hours will be held on Friday, January 31st, from noon to 1 p.m. at Nickerson Bourne Funeral Home in Bourne, followed by a service at the funeral home at 1 p.m. A procession to the Massachusetts National Cemetery in Bourne will follow the service. Camille L. Andrews. Camille Lacava Andrews of Manning, South Carolina, formerly of Mashpee, died as a result of injuries sustained when she was struck by a car on December 21st. She was 61. Miss Andrews lived most of her life in Mashpee. She attended Mashpee schools before graduating from Falmouth High School in 1981. She was a postal employee for many years and retired from the East Sandwich Post Office. In retirement, she enjoyed traveling and tending to her flower and vegetable garden. She leaves her father, John J. LaCava, brothers John E. and Michael Lavaca, her husband Keith Andrews, children Timothy and Richard Cohan, and Courtney Rafferty, and 2 grandchildren. She was predeceased by her husband Philip Cohan and her mother Margaret Lacava. A celebration of life will be held on Saturday, February 8th from 1 to 4 p.m. at Quasnet Valley Country Club in Mashpee. Next article. Cape's only state psychiatric hospital slated to close, by Jamie Perkins. The Massachusetts Department of Mental Health has decided to close the Pocasset Mental Health Center, also known as the Cape and Islands Community Mental Health Center. The Pocasset Mental Health Center is a state-operated 16-bed psychiatric hospital with 56 staff members. It is Medicare certified, Joint Commission accredited, and the only state-run mental health facility on Cape Cod. The proposed closure, along with that of other mental health facility in Canton, is the result of suggested cuts to the Department of Mental Health fiscal year 2026 budget that Governor Maura Healey submitted to the legislature on Wednesday. According to the Barnstable County Department of Human Services County Health and Human Services Directory, the PMHC offers partial hospitalization and inpatient services, including psychotropic medication, individual psychotherapy, group therapy, mentoring, peer support, and suicide prevention services. It serves adults with serious mental illness and children and adolescents with severe emotional disturbance. State Representative David T. Vieira, Republican Falmouth, said in a press release on Thursday that elected officials representing Cape Cod, community leaders, healthcare professionals, and other stakeholders have been working tirelessly to reverse the decision since they were informed of it. These facilities are vital lifelines for children, families, and adults in need of mental span health support across our region. The absence of these resources will have devastating consequences for individuals and families already grappling with limited access to mental health care, Representative Vieira said. Mental health is just as essential as physical health. The proposed closure of these facilities is a step in the wrong direction. Cape Cod families depend on these services, and we owe it to our communities to ensure that help remains available. According to the press release, Representative Vieira spoke to the Department of Mental Health Commissioner Brooke Doyle, who shared that the quality of care at the Pocasset facility is not an issue, and the sole reason for shutting it down is a projected budget deficit. I understand the Pocasset facility is expensive to run with only 16 beds in an aging building. We need to shift this conversation from closure to what it would take to expand beds and services in a fiscally responsible manner, Representative Vieira said. Should the state legislature fund the necessary amount to continue operations, the facility could remain open while we have the time to reimagine mental health services at the Pocasset facility. I am urging my colleagues to join us in supporting the full funding for these vital services through fiscal year 2026. State Representative Stephen G. Serhos, Republican Barnstable, contributed his thoughts in the same press release. He is a former police officer and a member of the Massachusetts Joint Committee on Mental Health, Substance Use, and Recovery. I have seen firsthand how the lack of mental health care can spiral into tragedy for individuals, families, and entire communities. Mental health care is not a luxury, it is a necessity, he said. The closure of these facilities will leave vulnerable people without the support they desperately need, leading to more strain on our families, first responders, and already overstretched systems. This decision is unacceptable. State Senator Dylan A. Fernandez, Democrat, Falmouth, issued a separate statement on Tuesday in response to the closure. The Department of Mental Health's decision to close 16 inpatient... And I'm sorry to cut this story off, but that is all that I have time for. And this is Shannon, your reader, Wishing you to have a lovely, lovely week. Thank you so much. Goodbye.